Welcome and welcome back to the Light Renegades. My name is Starr. Thank you for joining me today, everyone. Today is this is a point that I've been incredibly hesitant to bring forward because I know that it's going to really rock the foundations of some in your understanding. And, I really didn't want to bring forward something that might be incredibly challenging to the collective, but I feel like if you are here and you are witnessing this, it is because that this is going to make sense to you somewhere. So please go easy on self with this expression. I know it's not going to be for all, and I know that some of you aren't seeding in the exact spaces of understanding that I am, and so just see this as a point of experiencing all that is. And what I've been gauging in my understanding is that the Light Renegades have been dealing with a lot of very succinct, timeline dependable expressions, and it's going to be up to you to understand where you're engaging in that space and what information is for you and not. So this is also a lesson in discernment as well, everyone, and that goes for anyone's understanding anywhere, any content that you are engaging with. Please use discernment wisely. But I wanted to share a few things that have been happening on my path. Behind the scenes, some expression of things that happened again today when I just felt like I couldn't ignore this understanding anymore. And I think sometimes my life is just so crazy that it feels like this isn't real, and I really have to stand stronger in my convictions of understanding that everything that is happening to me is happening for a reason, and for a very important reason too. So this is to help you in your seed, in your expression of self, and trusting in everything that is happening in your life thus far, whether this is something that others around you are corroborating in their expressions too. And please make sure that you're looking after your mental health and your physical vessel once engaging in spiritual practices of any kind. It's so important that you are looking after all facets of self in that space and getting support, perhaps medical support, professional support if you need it also. It's so important that you know that where you are in your expression, so that you can step forward and understanding that what is ever expanding in ether is true somewhere, and it's okay if that's true to you, is what I want to share. But I wanted to express a little bit deeper in the understandings of where I've been in purging energy of late. And I asked some of you out there to send me some energy because I was dealing with some aspects of, a real deep purge on the weekend, a couple of weekends ago. And I was put into a space where I was delving back into past life expressions, and I've been seeing, myself as darker expressions for the entirety of probably 2023, half of 2022, 2023, and understanding that I've been in very deep expressions of darkness, and that being a space that I was understanding so we could be in the timelines that we are now, and also combating the energy in some spaces. And I've been in timeline wars, as it were, time and time again, seeding in different expressions of understanding and closing down timelines that are not going to be helpful for us in the future. And what I'm even more delving into even more is understanding that timelines are closing at such a rapid rate that our expression of understanding all that is ever expanding also. So please don't hold on to anything too tightly in these spaces or in your own personal journey, because I feel like everything is shifting so frequently that it's going to be important that you remain fluid in your understanding. But where I was drawn to in that space was that I was asked to be put in a bath again. So I put myself in a salt bath, and this very much feels like a baptism of sorts in those spaces. There's been previous times in my journey where I've been on massive deep purges, and it's very much felt like the only way that I could feel fully grounded here was in a body of water. And I lit 3 candles around me, that felt really important in my expression. And this idea of that I was going to be releasing myself in this space and allowing for timelines to close behind me. And what I was feeling in this expression was that I could feel and hear someone really panting very, very closely to my shoulder and to my neck. And then all of a sudden, it was like I could feel and see myself as if someone had bitten into my neck, and they spat out a chunk of my flesh on the floor. This was like quite a graphic understanding, and I could feel myself, my whole body just fall to the ground, to the point where I felt like I was just bleeding out. Trigger warning on this, everyone. And I realized that I was being left for dead in that space. And to my surprise, I got up out of that space, and then I saw myself going and seeking revenge on those that had left me in that space. And they were predominantly male figures in that expression. And I realized that I was being how do I want to word it? I was being revengeful in my space, so that was something that I was having to let go of in that expression. But also I was being brought forward this understanding that I've seen time and time again of the idea of a vampire, and that being an incredibly true expression in so many aspects of understanding. I've remote viewed spaces of, I guess, vampiric energies somewhere, those that are feeding on the blood of others, and I've been seeing other aspects of previous lives that I've lived where I was doing research, in caverns and caves, and then there was just this thing that appeared from the darkness, and it completely wiped out all of those that are around me. And these expressions have been brought forward time and time and time and time again on this path, and specifically connecting to some pretty heavy duty energies that have been connected to the Vatican at some point too. So if you have a deeper expression of that understanding, please do step forward, and if you're able to share with me what you know, that would be incredibly helpful for me, because I'm only getting so far in my research, and I was told very early on in this path that I was going to be gaining a lot of information through others as well and their expressions. So if this is ringing true for you, if any of this rings true for you, please get in touch with me, because I feel like we might have some information to exchange with each other. And sometimes I really have to take a second, third look at self and my expression and think, why is this being brought forward in my space? Is this something that is going to be helpful for me? And why is it here? And I was reminded that very early on in my life, when everyone else is reading perhaps Harry Potter and other such, magical expressions, I was reading the unrest books, which is predominantly about, vampires and their expression. And I would feel so incredibly at home in that world. I can't even tell you. I was lost in those books for hours. And I had to remind myself that anything that happens in my life is there for a very specific reason. And it was because I was tapping into understanding previous notions that I've lived, previous lives that I've lived, and I could see myself, literally flying through the air and, standing on the top of buildings and jumping from building to building. And I was like, I have been this expression time and time again. And that's been leaking into, I guess, more energetic understandings of vampirism too, and understanding how to maneuver energy in that space, and those that are specifically energy vampires. And I feel like this is an expression that I've had to work through in my life time and time again, and I feel like this is definitely something that the negative reptilians use as a tactic of ciphering and leeching energy. So I was brought into a space of releasing myself from that expression, saying sorry to those souls that I sought revenge on, because in terms of energy, that wasn't the right way to cope within that situation, but I was not of a higher level of understanding. So I was releasing myself from that space, and I think other people that I know in previous and parallel timelines to me within that understanding. And I was also being drawn to this expression of myself in a cave. It was, I don't know how to explain it, because I was just seeing it as like almost like a black cave. And I've seen this expression before, and I asked some of you to step forward if you understood the energies of the pentagram, of this has been something that you've been seeing time and time again. And I've told this story before, but I was just in and my skin was just the deepest black that you could ever possibly imagine, and I was a different type of creature. I had massive, black bat wings, and I could see this pentagram glowing like bright red, and I couldn't work out if I had been locked in that space, or if this was a space that I kept myself in. And in that expression, teams of light stepped forward and they said, you have to end this expression of you here, because it is tying you to things that you no longer need to be working with. And I think I was tapping into that energy when I was dealing with timelines where there was more, demonic forces, energies of the negative reptilians that have been coerced in some expressions that were here to, cause harm, cause havoc. And this also ties into the energies of magic and those manifesting energies from their belief systems of demons, and that being rippled out into the collective. I was closing down timelines, so I had to kind of be on an energetic frequency to match those energies to be able to end the expressions in that space and close those timelines. So now I was ending my expression of that being, that dark being that was, and I realized that I actually trapped myself in that space. So it was me that in a different form that had trapped my energy in that space, because I knew at some point I was going to have to go in and release myself from that space so I could close down those timelines. So I went in and I released my soul from that expression. I said sorry to myself, and I forgave them, and I was grateful for them to be helping me in the spaces where I was having to deal with those timelines. And I was hesitant to bring this forward because I know it just sounds like fantasy. I know it doesn't sound true and real, and this might be an expression that is too much for some. But I just have to trust that everything that is brought forward to my table and my expression is here for a reason, and everything is just so ever interwoven within itself, and things that I could never possibly imagine to be, fully true somewhere, always comes back around in a 3D, I guess, type of way, like I expressed in the last Crow video, this expression of someone saying that, you know, there were those close and they have been looking to buy properties in Hastings, which was the place that Aleister Crowley died. And now this expression from, you know, Teams of Light was saying that the energy has shifted so much in that space of Hastings that others bright light and souls are being drawn back into that space to inject more light into those expressions. So that's going to completely disperse, you know, all this negativity, all of this darkness and sadness that, you know, Aleister Crowley kept in that space when he had passed. It's now going to be dispersed and transformed into that a brighter expression again. So I was elated to hear that 360 moment and being brought back into my 3D. So sometimes, you know, I'm hesitant to bring things forward because I know it sounds like fantasy, but there are always moments that keep coming true that make me realize that, you know, everything is here and it's ever present. And I've been seeing a lot of bats of late, and I love bats. I've always loved bats, but I've been seeing so many bats of late. And you know, this just being something that I took as a sign. I was like, okay, as much as I perhaps don't want to believe all of this to be true, you know, it's quite a hard space to be in, to realize that I was seeking revenge on those in other lifetimes, and that's been, you know, leaking into my present, given understanding. That's quite a deep aspect of shadow to face, to process is what I want to share. But I realize that I'm going to have to just continue to speak my truth, and those that it resonates to are going to find their expression in this also. So that's there for some. But on the back of that whole expression within that deep purge space, you know, I've been dealing with a lot of energy to do with my sacral chakra, and I've also recorded a sacral chakra reading on my other channel, which is Elemental Origins 2.2. I'll tag that in the description, because throughout this path, and this is an expression that I brought forward before, is that my menstrual cycle started to be very much woven into my path of expanse and my ascension process. And I think maybe about 3 years ago is when I really started to gain a lot of pain in my spaces of my menstrual cycles. It's not something that I'd ever suffered with before. And Teams of Light stepped forward and said, you know, hey, this is going to be a space that we use to help you purge out energies that are no longer helpful to you. But this also meant that, you know, I was absolutely crippled over in pain at some of the most deepest expressions of my journey. And today was no exception of that. I woke up and absolutely doubled over in pain. And I was working yesterday with a very dear soul, and we were both releasing each other from aspects of this pentagram understanding. We'd had previous lives together, and we've been both was working with that symbol. So we released both of our souls from that space, and I was waiting for, you know, I guess the purging aspect of that, and that very much came, you know, as early as it can. And I was doubled over in pain this morning, and I worked through that expression. And then I was in town today meeting a friend for breakfast, and I thought, okay, I can feel this energy again. And I was like, I'm just going to have to take a minute. So we both actually went to find a public restroom, because the place that we were in, there wasn't a restroom in there. And no surprise to me, you know, when it actually happened, I thought, oh, here's this expression again. No surprise to me, I ended up in a building that I have felt has been very much connected to the negative reptilian order and also Freemasons somewhere. And I had, you know, no 100% understanding of this space apart from me energetically feeling it, and me doing energy work in that space time and time again. I've been guided back to this space, and I'd completely forgotten about this expression. And I found myself, you know, in this public restroom, and I was, you know, I'm going to get quite graphic here, but there was a point to this madness. And, you know, I was emptying my moon cup, and it went everywhere. It spilled all over the floor, which is a black and white checkered floor, which is definitely the connection to the Freemasons there, at least in my expression. And I thought, this is this expression again. And through a little bit of time and my journey, I was kind of going to different spaces, and I wasn't realizing that this is what I was doing, but I was spilling my cup of blood in these spaces, and that was being a real deep cleanse and a full circle moment in some expressions of my ancestral lineage and connections to the Freemasons and magic somewhere that wasn't helpful and was quite harmful to my, you know, soul's expression. So I've been releasing myself, purging that energy in those spaces to say, you know, I'm releasing myself of that energy. So I'm bringing this forward to those that might have been going through some expressions that you feel like, you know, this is just energetically making sense to me, but I know that somewhere this feels so outlandish and it just doesn't feel like it can be true. I'm right there with you. You know, sometimes I have to pinch myself and say, you know, stand strong in what you are sensing and feeling, because it is true and it is here for you for a reason. So please trust in everything that you are intuitively being brought forward to your table. And I wanted to share this expression, and I wasn't sure where. So after the day after my purge, and I was told, you know, to completely write up everything that was on my calendar in that day. I'd actually arranged to see some friends that I haven't seen in a really long time. So I was actually quite upset by that expression. But what I was dealing with, you know, in that space was, yeah, incredibly tender, incredibly challenging. And I thought, gosh, yeah, I really did need to take that whole entirety of that day to just be in the energy of that purging of all of those emotions and those expressions. And, you know, there were some other things brought to that expression that, that I'm not going to share because they're quite personal, but I wanted to bring forward this expression for those that it might resonate with. But on the back of me having to clear my calendar, I actually got invited to a football game. And, I'm not incredibly into football, but I don't mind watching football. But I was invited to a football game, and I thought, this feels incredibly potent and important, because I was invited to the stadium that I've mentioned before that was in my local newspaper, that I just happened to see one day, that Taylor Swift was looking to buy this stadium, which I didn't realize was the oldest football stadium to exist in the UK. It's called the Notts County expression, and they are also called the Magpie. So it was no expression, it wasn't lost on me in the expression that, Taylor Swift was supposedly wanting to buy this club, and this was brought out in the papers that, that expression was wrong and it wasn't true, and they played one of her songs at halftime as a respect to her, and I just didn't believe that wasn't true somewhere. That there was no part of me that just didn't believe that, that was an expression that was trying to be happen in that space. So I got invited to a Notts County football match, and it felt very much like I was supposed to be there. And Teams of Light said, you're going to come face to face with negative reptilians in this space. Be ready. But you are here as an expression of, you cannot take me, and also I own the energy of this space. And this is not myself in my own expression, this is in terms of the light. I'm standing there as a pillar of light in that expression. And when I went into this space, I was expecting it to feel, I don't know, somewhat a little bit more profound than it did. But I had a great time. I enjoyed watching the football, as it were. But I caught glimpses and eyes of, some around me, and I thought, you're the negative reptilian here. I see you and I feel you, and that's an expression that is here. But I also saw a lot of energy that wasn't connected to a high vibration in all of its entirety. And I was guided to, go to the public bathrooms at halftime, just before halftime actually, and put a dome in this energy space. I was guided to dismantle some crystal energy underneath the floor of this pitch, and also block off energies that were connected to tunnels in this space. And I realized that the place that is my hometown, there was a lot of tunnels that run underneath this aspect of understanding that are energetically tied to the negative reptilian order. And the placement of this football stadium is actually directly in line with the Masonic Lodge as well. And that wasn't lost on me. After this expression happened, I thought, there was a direct correlation within that space too. So that was also interesting to me. So I put a dome of this energy around. I recalibrated the energy in this space. I sent out energy to the tunnels. I dismantled some crystals in that space, but it was a very quick motion that all of this happened. So much so that I didn't feel like I was really doing much in that space. And it was interesting because my guides couldn't come through and speak to me in that space. And it was because I think that the energy was so strong for the negative reptilians that, they were trying to block that, specific frequency that teams use when they try and channel through you, and that does waver in its expression. I'm going to come forward, I think, with a deeper expression of how I channel all of that in that expression. Anna Maria also, so you can get two very different aspects of how we connect in with energy. But I wasn't able to hear my guides. But I was joined by a very small, very interesting looking fly at some point of the second half of this football match, and I looked down and I was like, oh, okay, here's Teams of Light. And through 2020 to 2023, flies and insects have been an expression that Teams of Light come in when they're really wanting to just show me support. And sometimes, when I'm blocking and batting out their energy, they will come and just be with me in that space. And it's not, every fly that I see or every insect that I see, but I'll know when it's something that is there and is an expression to be brought forward that is wanting to speak to me. And this fly did not leave me. It was a real tiny, very interesting, like brown looking fly. I've genuinely never seen, I don't want to say a fly because it wasn't necessarily a fly, but an insect that I've genuinely never ever seen before. And it wouldn't leave my leg, to the point, I was pushing my finger to try and bat it away, and it just kept sidestepping and just staying there. And if when you work with insects or flies or whatever, they move in a very specific way, but this insect was not moving in the ways that a normal insect would. And I had to chuckle to myself because I thought, Teams of Light are always trying to bring forward expressions to us, and sometimes it's in the most simplest of ways that we miss it. And I think sometimes we're looking for these massive, deep, grandiose expressions all the time, but that's not always what is helpful. And it's definitely been in a space where I've been having to really put more faith and trust in my guides again. There's been some expressions brought forward that really wavered in my personal trust within my personal guides. I trust everything that I'm being brought forward to the collective, but there has been some expressions behind the scenes where I've been having to gain more trust with my Teams of Light, because sometimes teams have to work in a very I would like to say unconventional way as opposed to what I thought teams of light might work in. And I've had expressions of teams like fully lie to me because I needed to go through a space of expanse, and I've not heard other people bring forward this expression, but I know that it does happen. And I want for that to be a space that you use to catapult you in your discernment, but also know that teams of light are here for our expanse above all else. So sometimes they don't play, by the rules. Sometimes they don't play fair. Sometimes they have to play dirty because they need to know that we are taking on challenges head on, and that we're really facing the aspects of our growth to its deepest capacity. And especially those that are incredibly tapped in, those are already expansive souls, we are as one with them. So the rules are a little bit different, at least what I'm experiencing in my own personal journey. And please do share your comments in that expression too. I'd love to hear. But I feel like there's been some expressions where I was lied to, so that I was using my own discernment. So please remember that also, everyone. And remember that teams of light are always trying to contact you. And if you've been asking for connection, was it that fly that you batted away at the football game, at wherever you've been in the park, this one that wouldn't leave you alone? Were they here to give you a deeper message that you were receiving energetically? And I've been very much connecting to the animal realm of late again, and I realize it's because I wasn't trusting everything that teams were bringing forward to me in my personal expression, because I've been having to gain that trust again within my own self and my expression, and where I'm connecting in with them. And I think there's been a shift in whom I'm going to be working with as well and moving forward. So that's been something that has been kind of up in the air, that I've been having to sink into and to be ready to be receiving that energy as well, everyone. So remember that if things have been shifting in your space, if you've been feeling a little bit disconnected with the guys in terms of how you normally connect in with them, perhaps they're trying to connect in a different way with you as well, everyone. And set those marker points and those parameters so that you do feel safe. Ask for your guides to be connecting with you in a very specific way, as a point of trust, as reference as well with them. But I'm getting a little bit of ahead of myself within that expression. There'll be more to come in the coming weeks within all of that. But I think that's all that I would like to share today. I just wanted to bring forward some expressions that I've been in of late, and for those that have been asking, I've been feeling the energy, and I wanted to share as much as that I felt comfortable with, and as much as that I felt would be helpful to some in their expression, but also keeping it in the spaces that where it's going to be helpful for those to find it also, and not leaking into those that perhaps this expression might not be for their highest good in this expression of their path right now. So I hope this understanding has been helpful for some. If you know a little bit more about vampiric energy, please do step forward. There's been something you've been working through in your expression, or you have some incidences where you've come face to face with that expression. Please do let me know. I'd love to hear and have a discussion with you if that feels aligned and comfortable to you. But yeah, that's all from my energy update, and I guess the darkness as well somewhere, everyone. But please trust in everything that has been brought forward to you. And if teams of light are working sneakily behind the scenes, I like to say they're living in the bit of the taboo. It's because that they are trying to work with you so that you delve into deeper expressions of yourself and deepest expressions of soul. And sometimes they have to go in very roundabout ways of doing that. So continue to trust your teams of light, but know that whatever they do is always for your highest good, your highest integrity, and they do it for us, and sometimes it does take a knock at the ego, sometimes it does take a knock at the pride, sometimes it does take a knock in trusting them, but they take that because they know that it's going to help us at a soul level, and that we will circle back around again and be stronger with them, is what I want to share. So if you've been in that expression, please know I hear you, I see you, and it can be very tender spaces that this happens in, and we have to be okay with that and trusting that they are doing everything for our highest good and our highest expression also. But that will be all for myself and my self-expression today. Everyone used to saying there's someone else with me. But that's all for myself today, and I'll be back real soon. Take care.